Hello, welcome back to our channel once again. And today in Physics Quill we are going to discuss vibrations in strings. We are going to discuss it extensively and then we will solve a few examples to drive home the lesson. Okay, now when a stretched string, maybe a rope or a guitar string, that should be a very good example. A guitar string is held at both ends. Okay, if you pluck it gently, you tap it gently, it begins to vibrate. And because it is held at both ends, here we have N1, and this is our string. All right, something like that. It begins to vibrate up and down. By up and down, I mean, it begins to vibrate like this way, up, down, something like that. Good. So now in vibrating, it creates a standing wave, and this standing wave comes in such a way that you have some areas or some points on the wave that do not move at all, and those areas that do not move at all are called nodes. And then you have points that have the maximum movements, like these points, like this point, like this point, like this point. They are called the antinodes. Okay, and I need us to pay very serious attention to this and also note it that these points are called nodes and these points are called antinodes. Now, if you look carefully at this, you will realize that at the point where they are clamped, there is no movement. So here at the point where it is clamped is a node, and at this other point where it's also clamped is another node. So that is to say, we can only have nodes at the extreme. We cannot have an antinode at the extreme when it is a string. I will show you cases where we can have that, but for this case we cannot have it. We cannot have any other thing. We cannot have an antinode at the end. Okay, we can only have nodes. So that means if it is not at this point, this barrier or this clamp, if it is not clamped here, it's going to be clamped somewhere here. And if it is not clamped there, it is going to be clamped somewhere here. If it is not clamped here, then it is going to be clamped somewhere here. And this is the least place where we can have it clamped. Okay, so now also, by the way, this can only happen for a transverse wave. Okay, a transverse wave is a wave whose direction of propagation is perpendicular to the vibration that is causing the wave. Okay, so this is a wave moving in that direction, in the x direction, and the vibration that is causing that vibration, the vibration that is causing the wave to move, is in is at right angle with the direction that they move. We'll call that a transverse wave. There are two types of waves. We have the transverse and then we have the longitudinal. You cannot achieve stationary wave or standing wave with a longitudinal wave. It can only be done with a transverse wave. Okay, so back to what we are dealing with. Okay, now if I pick the lowest, because I have told you that there has to be two nodes at the end, and if you look carefully, this point and this point, this point and this point are the successive nodes that we have. Okay, they are the successive nodes from what we are dealing with. Okay, now remember, I cannot have a barrier here. I cannot have anything attached here. It must have to be nodes, such that the least that I can have is this: two successive nodes. Two successive nodes. Good. So here is node, here is a node. Now you remember that for waves for a full cycle of a wave, this to this point is called one wavelength, lambda, one wavelength. Okay, so now you notice that if I complete this as a standing wave, you are going to have something like this. We are going to have something like this, right? So here, from here to here, which is exactly what we have, here, from here to here, from here to here, which is exactly what we have, is lambda over 2. So here we are having lambda over 2, and also we have lambda over 2. Okay, so it means that from this point to this point is actually lambda over 2. So lambda over 2 is the distance between two successive nodes in a standing wave. The distance between two successive nodes in a standing wave is always lambda over 2. But if we look at the distance between them, the distance between them is also L. Okay, L. That's what we want to call L, the distance between them. Okay, so from this, we can say that L is equal to lambda over 2, where L is equal to the distance between the fixed ends. L is equal to distance between the fixed ends, and lambda is the wavelength. So from this, we can deduce from this that lambda is equal to 2L. Lambda is equal to 2L. Now recall, so I'm just going to have this aside to say, recall that frequency of a wave is equal to the velocity of that wave divided by the wavelength of that wave. Okay, so we need to keep this somewhere. Now, if that is so, it means that for this, for this that we're dealing with, which we've already found out that lambda is equal to 2L, I can pick the value for lambda and then I am putting it here. So instead of lambda, I can now put in 2L here, so that we will have that F is equal to V over 2L. V is equal to F over 2L. Now, this is the simplest mode of vibration we can get from the frequency. It is the simplest. We cannot go any, we can't go smaller than this. We can't go any, closer. The clamps cannot come closer than they already are. So because of that, because it is the basic, this frequency has a special name. It is called the fundamental frequency. It is called the fundamental frequency. And I want to denote it with F naught. Okay, now we will be needing it along the line, so I am going to pen it down somewhere here to say that F naught is equal to V over 2L, and I'm going to put it in a box, and we will try not to wipe it. Okay, so let's move a step further. A step further would be to say, what if instead of just this end, we decide to add this. So we're moving from here because after this level, this is the next place we can put a barrier. We cannot put a barrier here. We can't put a barrier here. We can't put a barrier at this point. This is where we can put another barrier. After this barrier, this is the next place we can have a barrier. So that when we pluck it, we can only have, remember that only nodes are permitted to be at the barrier. Okay, at the points where they are clamped, only node can be here, only node can be here. So we cannot put a clamp at the antinode. A clamp cannot stay at the antinode, such that immediately after the fundamental frequency, the fundamental level, the next one we are going to have is going to look something like this. Beautiful. So you see, we also have another node here. We have a node here and we also have another node there. Okay, so we'll begin to realize that the L has increased. The length for this is no longer the same as the length for when it was just at the basic. What's the implication of that? It means that our lambda has also increased, because from here to here is lambda over 2, and from here to here is also lambda over 2. So when you add lambda over 2 plus lambda over 2, you will get lambda itself. Okay, so it means that L is equal to lambda, and L is equal to lambda. If I then make that transfer into this, if I substitute into this, generally that F is equal to V over lambda, if I make that substitution, I am going to have that the frequency for this setup will be equal to V over L. V over L. And since I call this F0, I am going to call this F1, and I am going to write it aside. So I will say that F1 is equal to V over L, and I am also going to put that in a box. Remember, we gave this a name. We'll call this the fundamental frequency. So I'm going to tell you what we call this later on, but follow me. So we move on again. In moving on again, we want to say, okay, we want to now move our barrier from this point, and we want to bring our barrier to this point. We now want our barrier to stay here, so that we'll have 1, 2, like 3 loops. We'll have like 3 loops inside it. Okay, now if we do that, this is what it is going to become. It is going to be loop 1, loop 2, loop 3. Okay, so we'll have loop, to complete that loop, yeah, we'll have something like that. Okay, now remember that if we do that, this is going to be lambda over 2, and this will also be lambda over 2, and this will also be lambda over 2, right? So, and of course, our L has also changed its shape. And what is the shape that our L took now? Our L is now equal to lambda over 2 plus lambda over 2 plus lambda over 2. 1, 2, 3. And that is equal to 3 lambda over 2. Wow. So L is equal to 3 lambda over 2. So remember, before we move on, we are always getting to, make lambda the subject of the formula. So I will try to wipe this area so that we can get some space to work. Okay, so it means that we just got to the point where we said that L is equal to 3 lambda over 2. So 2L will be equal to 3 lambda, and therefore we can say that lambda is equal to 2L divided by 3. If lambda is equal to 2L divided by 3, then I can also slot it into this equation again. I can slot it into this equation again, slotting the value of lambda. So I am having that F will be equal to V over 2L over 3. And if we do a multiplicative inverse, we'll have that F is equal to V times 3 over 2L, which is equal to 3V over 2L. So it means that F is equal to 3V over 2L when we have extended these to 4 nodes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 nodes. Okay, that is 3 loops. And then we're having F is equal to 3V over 2L. So I am also going to write it down somewhere here, and I'm going to call it F2 because we are numbering 0, 1, 2. Okay, F2 will be equal to 3V over 2L, and I'm also going to put it in box. I'll do one more and then we will move on. Okay, so one more. I'm doing it because I want to move all the way. I'm doing one more because I want to move all the way from here down to this point. And of course, it can also continue again and again, but we are not really going to do anything around this side. Okay, we're just going to stop here because there's so much we need to cover. All right, now if I do that, I will have from here, okay, switch over to black. From here is lambda over 2. You remember that? Okay, let's do a fresh diagram. All right, the fresh diagram will look like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Beautiful. Don't mind the way my diagram is looking. So here becomes lambda over 2. 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 So what does that tell us? That tells us that our L, the totality of our L, becomes L equals, our L will be equal to lambda over 2 plus lambda over 2 plus lambda over 2 plus lambda over 2. Therefore, L will be 4 lambda over 2. But 2 can divide 4 to give us 2, right? So L will be 2 lambda. And you know that lambda in this case becomes L over 2. Now, if I push it also into this, I will have that the frequency F will be equal to V over L times 2. You know, we're saying times 2 just like what we did here. So at the end of the day, we are saying that F is equal to 2V over L. 2V over L. So just like we did, I am going to say F3 is equal to 2V over L. And I'm also going to put it in a box. Okay, so we've seen how we got this, how we got this, how we got this, how we got this. So I'm going to make a comment about it and then we can move on. So I'm wiping these other areas. All right. If you are really understanding what we're saying, you would be doing us a lot of favor by subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and of course sharing it with your friends. We actually upload physics contents. We try to solve examples, quantitative examples, and of course qualitative when the need arises. So